2020 schedule. So let's check this thing out.
It sets up nice for LSU.
Texas comes to Baton Rouge, comes to Death Valley. Of course, that was quite the game in Austin. That's before we knew how dominant LSU was going to be. We thought that to be a huge national victory. Of course, Texas lost 5 games, but it was still Texas talent at the time, and it was still a healthy football team. Really good football game that LSU won by a score, but proved to be, I don't want to say substantially, but on that night, decidedly the better team. Got Texas coming back in. That obviously highlights the non-conference slate. And then, of course, Brett, what I look at in the SEC, and we talked about this when I carved up and shredded up the scheduling approach in the SEC and the other conferences. Who do you play in the other division? And that's, of course, paramount. It's always Florida. And let's see, who do you got coming up this year? South Carolina out of the East. So what jumps out at you?
I mean, this is such a favorable schedule for LSU. I think just like the last season, we will know a lot about LSU in this Texas game. Miles Brennan will kind of have to prove who he is. I don't think he will against UTSA. Then you go to a pretty easy game against Rice, and then you get Lane Kiffin early in the schedule. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think LSU should be able to win a game against Ole Miss. Then you got Nicholls State and then at Florida. And then at Florida is that game. I mean, Florida hates LSU and LSU hates Florida. But, I mean, even then you go Arkansas, Mississippi State, and then by Bama. I mean, there's just none of these heavy hitters. I think playing Auburn late in the season when LSU's normally played them early, that's a little bit of a different dynamic. But, I mean, if you're looking at LSU side, I mean, Auburn's going to have the Iron Bowl the next week. So it's like, I mean, you're going to be able to pop some shoulder pads over there. Nothing jumps out at me. Getting Bama at home, I think, is actually probably a positive for once because LSU finally proved that they could beat these guys, and LSU's not afraid of Alabama anymore. And you can say maybe they never were afraid, but I don't know, whatever. They're not afraid now. So I think all the home crowd and everything will be a big help for that game. I think if losing a game at Florida or at Auburn, I think is where you have to look at the schedule for LSU. And obviously you can always lose to Bama, but I look at the schedule and I see 1 loss. I see 2 losses. I don't really see anything worse than that. Yeah,
what jumps out to me is, first of all, we had an odd calendar year in which everybody got 2 byes in 2019. So we're back to 1 bye. The bye comes before Bama. Without looking at the Alabama schedule, I'm going to lay a bet that the bye comes for the LSU game for Alabama.
Always.
Okay. So the other thing I look for here, Brett, is, again, when I look at the SEC or any really outside the Big 12 where everybody plays everybody, okay, who are you playing, obviously, outside the division? And it's a date against South Carolina. They got decent talent. They went 4-8. They're coming off a bad season. They did win 3 of those games in the SEC. They're not a bad team, but they're not anywhere close to LSU's class. What I look for as well is there a murderer's row, which I usually get, we usually see, especially from an SEC Western Division team. Oh man, that late October stretch is brutal. There's 3 or 4 consecutive weeks of it's just a murderer's row.
Having to go back to back in the SEC really sucks. Like back to back road games, I guess I should say.
The games are spaced out. Texas is spaced out from Florida, spaced out from Bama. Auburn, Texas A&M on the road to close it out. That would be a possible issue there.
It's the easiest LSU schedule I've seen that I can remember. I mean, it really is. Obviously, Texas, I'm not saying that they're a bad team, but it's 1. Normally, we play like 2-ish good out-of-conference games, and then we have it stacked up against everything. This just looks like you prepare each week for the team, but it's like, hey, we're building to beat Florida. And then it's like, okay, guys, we have Arkansas's not going to beat us. Okay. Mississippi State, I don't know. Mike Leach, we'll see. But it's like, it's not this, oh my God, okay. I hope our guys are healthy. And then it's like, okay, then we get Bama. Then you get a little break with South Carolina, you'd have to think, before Auburn. I've just never felt like it's been such we can do this. I mean, I think this team should go 11-1. I really do. They're talented enough, and I believe in Miles Brennan. Maybe I'm stupid, but I'm a believer.
You know, this says something for the SEC West. when you say this is the lightest schedule that you've seen, and I'm still going to rank it. So what I do, Brett, is I take all the Power 5 schedules, I compare them all, go through all sorts of metrics, and rank them from most difficult, and then go all the way back. And this is still probably going to be a top 10 schedule, top 12 schedule in the nation, because it's just that tough.
No, I mean, definitely, obviously, like you're going to play good teams, but it's like I just don't see any of these like back-to-back games where it's like, oh man, we're hopefully we can get one of these, or like, man, we're probably not going to catch both of them. I just don't see that anymore. And it's like normally an LSU schedule, like you said, you're just like, oh man, this is going to be a crappy 3-week stretch, and it's just like I don't see that here. It's like, oh, we got Nickel State thrown in there. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, you can prepare for the big games. Again, Texas coming to Death Valley. Florida's out of division. Obviously, the traditional opponent there, South Carolina, and the SEC West gauntlet, with Ole Miss and Mississippi State not being as good as they typically are, probably not as tough as it typically is.